This is SaaS Therapy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of SaaS Therapy, the show where we help you save your most important business relationships, your customers. I'm your host, Todd Kirk. I'm joined by my never will be pinched friend, Casey Trujillo, and my co-host. If you're listening right now, it's near St. Patrick's Day for us at least, and I think Casey's got a green sweater on because he's afraid of which my kids this morning came out before I even got dressed for the day, and immediately were wanted to pinch me. I was like, what? It's so weird, man. What a weird tradition we have in this country. I don't get it.
Seriously.
So Casey, today, for one of the things we've wanted to focus on this year is talking a little bit more about some of the myths that exist around customer education and customer success. And one that's been on my mind recently a lot has been this concept that a lot of times the very first thing that I hear people say when one of their core goals and their core outcomes for the customer education team is to reduce support tickets. And I want to take a little bit of a hot take. I believe that is wrong.
Okay.
Now, the reason I believe that's wrong is because it's not necessarily a bad thing to want to reduce support tickets, but it's the assumption that just introducing training will reduce support tickets, and that is by extension a good thing. I feel like that's a very incomplete take. And so I want to explore that concept today, because I feel like a lot of people just say, if I train, support tickets will go down. And if support tickets go down, then we did our job and everybody's happy. And that's the myth. So I want to start there, because I've seen that happen. I've seen that request or that focus come up a lot. And I'm curious what your perspective on it is, and how can we help people understand that there's a lot of myths that are wrapped up in the statement of, I want to train to reduce support tickets.
Yeah, I think TK, I think for me, I think the big issue, and I think this is a lot in the SaaS industry, is it's very difficult to measure what is actually having the impact.
Right.
So that's why you get into this quandary of what's actually helping. Is this reducing support tickets? Is it increasing support tickets? So for example, let's say you probably have professional services. They come out, they do training, right? How could I possibly say that Todd, who attended my training, didn't submit a support ticket because of the training? I have no idea how to do that, right? The only thing I know is if you submit a support ticket and someone on the support desk answers it, the person on the support desk completed that ticket. I can give attribution to that person.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where it becomes difficult, is because leadership wants to have that tangible evidence to say, we did A, and because we did A, B was the result.
Yes. So in other words, if I'm an executive, a lot of times I have a simplified dashboard that is made, that I've got so many things I got to worry about. The number of the support ticket volume that I have is a simple metric that I can see and understand as a key indicator in the business of something that's healthy, right?
Yes.
And not only that, but support tickets are also expensive. So if I can reduce them, or I get the idea that I'm going to have less of them over time, then that speaks to an executive leader, right? So that maybe is the reason why it's such a core focal point a lot of times with customer education, is because we know there's ROI there. And so if we can somehow get attribution for our impact on that number in a positive way, or in a perceived positive way, then that's going to be really good for us in the long term.
Yeah. And so this is why executives believe in a myth, and they know it's against their logic. So usually executives, right, they're very logical in how they approach things. Not too many times do they just make gut instinct approaches. So if the support desk says, hey, we do these trainings, because of these trainings, we can show that we reduce these support tickets, right? They're like, great, let's hire more people. And so they start hiring more implementation people, or they start hiring more support desk people, right? Or the reason why they go in there and they start looking at agents and bots and different things like that to try to close support tickets, right? Because again, the only quantifiable measurement they have is people answering questions in an implementation call, or person answering that support desk ticket, and they can close that down. So they start hiring more people. And then all of a sudden, executives go, wait a second, I can't keep hiring people. This isn't working for us. It's just, we can't keep up with that. There's just too many deals that we're selling to hire more and more and more. So, Todd, I'm interested in your take on this. How would you then help an executive see two things? One, training can reduce down support tickets. But two, more importantly, hopefully the support tickets that we do get are better support tickets.
Yes.
So,
in fact,
Todd, talk a little bit about that. I know you have a ton of thoughts on that.
I do. So I think that to me is actually the biggest crux of this myth, is that it's oversimplified into a focal point on quantity and not on quality. So I think that is a really fundamental miss for so many people in this world, is you have to first think it's not just how many support tickets am I getting, but it is the type of support tickets that I'm getting. So here's a really good example. So I would say that most customers probably fall into one of three buckets, and I want to talk about it from the perspective of success and communication, right? So let's talk about the first audience, which is the people who are silently failing. So you have a lot of customers who probably come on who should be supporting, or who need support, who need training, who should be talking with us, right? And they don't. And those people who silently fail, they probably churn at a really, really high rate, because they're not engaged, or they're not seeing value. They're not seeing success. They feel frustrated, but they're not telling you, right?
Yeah.
Then there's the loud failures, right? There's the people who are loudly failing. So there's the silently failing, and then there's the loudly failing. The loudly failing are the people who are constantly bringing up all of these same questions over and over and over again, and things just aren't clicking, right? They're failing to understand. Those people also churn at a really high rate. Then there's the people who are loudly succeeding. And those are a large portion of the people who get tickets. And my guess is the people who are loudly succeeding, their support tickets are a really good indicator that they're at a higher likelihood to renew and stay with the company for a long time. And we just kind of bucket all support tickets into the same level. And I think that is a wrong way to do it. So what I think would be helpful today is to explore some frameworks that might help us to understand, well, okay, so if it's not just about how many tickets we're getting, but it's about the quality of the tickets that we're getting, the types of tickets that we're getting, how do we turn this into something that executives can understand and look at in a way that's healthier and better, so that they can still have a good idea on, like, is the engine running well, right? Because obviously you don't want to just be like, there's two ways you could look at this wrong, right? It's like, hey, we got a lot of support tickets. That's great. There's also like, we got very few support tickets. That's great. Both of those are like, that's wrong. That's not the right way to look at this. And so you have to take that one click deeper. You have to go that one layer in further to really understand what's going on.
Yeah. So the first framework I teach is, and again, I probably heard this from somebody, and I apologize that I'm not giving you the attribution to this, or maybe I came up with it. No clue, Todd.
Casey's about to write a book on this subject and take full credit.
Again, I don't know.
Whatever
he's
about to say.
I apologize to everybody on this one. So if you're like, oh, so-and-so said this, tell me so I can, give them that attribution. But, I've always taught when I'm doing, consulting, is users do not ask how until they know why. So I think that's a very important framework, and I want to break that down a little bit more. Is, Todd, we were working with an account, and we were talking with the implementation team, and we're like, okay, we'd help them create a digital scalable onboarding system. So the goal is, how do we get users to answer the simple how-to questions? So again, users only ask how when they know the why. So they know that they need to install the software. So that's their why. I have to install the software. So as you can imagine, if I buy a CRM software, the hows are, how do I create a lead? How do I create an opportunity? These are basic how questions that every user knows. For a CRM, I need to know how to do this because I know the why of a CRM, right? So their goal was, I don't want to answer those questions. Because the SaaS vendor, what they want is an implementation. I want to talk about workflows. I want you to be able to understand that, hey, when you create an opportunity and it's gone stale for 14 days, how do we send automation to the account rep, to the manager, to let them know that this is stale? We need to take action. Like, how do I get productive? How do I find the real value of a CRM? So for them, the question was, what type of questions am I getting in an implementation? Am I getting basic how-to questions? Or am I getting advanced questions? So for me, Todd, should good training reduce down support tickets? Yes, in the how-to questions, the basic questions that if I really don't know your software, these are the how-to questions I'm probably going to ask. And so those are the questions. That's my beef.
Yes.
Oh yeah, you want to say something first?
Well, and I want to highlight something. I would say that it's really training should reduce a lot of the basic how-to questions, right? It may actually introduce much more advanced how-to questions.
That's the point.
Right? And that the idea is like, I need to up-level the types of conversations that my customers are having. And that means they're getting deeper penetration into using your application, and they're more invested if they're asking more advanced questions than they are asking, how do I log in? Where's this button? What is, how do I click to open this menu? Right? Like that kind of stuff is like, oh my gosh, like, if you need me to handhold you on these really basic functions, it means that like you're like, those are the people who I would say are loudly failing, right? And we want to try to get away from the loudly failing people as much as we can. That's the bucket we need to figure out how to decrease the most.
Yes. And that's the one so again, if I'm working with an executive, I'm saying there's two types of tickets. There's a ticket we don't want, and there's actually a support ticket we do want, because I believe that's healthy. So the support tickets we don't want are the basic how-to questions of your software, right? How do I connect this? How do I do the basic ones that you're like, that's just table stakes. Everybody has to learn how to do that to use my software. Again, that's my struggle with DAP solutions. And again, we have it in our solution. You have to have it. I'm not saying you don't have it, but you got to understand the quality of those reduction of support tickets will be those type of questions, which is good, which is great. But I have to be in your software to actually find that answer, right? Okay, the questions we do want, that we actually want an increase in these type of support tickets. Not saying that overwhelm us, but when I get a support ticket and I'm asking my support team what type of questions, I want the automation tickets. I want the tickets where we know that if they connect to our process payment and our software is running the process payment, we're getting a little small percentage of that. What makes us revenue? What are the expansion opportunities, right? Those are the support tickets I want, where people are like, hey, I hear that you have a process payment. I couldn't connect it, and I was hoping you could help me with this, right? The things that go up past the basics. Those are actually healthy support tickets that you want, that are in an indication that your training services, your implementation services are succeeding. If you're getting an increase, or not even an increase, if all your support tickets are just basic how-to questions, your training is failing. I'll give you an F, because you're doing it wrong. So that's my myth, Todd, is yes, good training can reduce support tickets, and it should reduce down the basics, but it should actually increase the advanced type of questions that you want users to ask. Todd, what's your reaction to that? Agree, disagree?
Oh, I very much agree. And I think that's the place that I think would be really helpful for a lot of people is to start thinking differently about the way they analyze the impact on training, right? So one, you hit up a really good point, which is ideally our training should be reducing a certain type of ticket that we're receiving, not all of our tickets in general. In fact, it's very possible, and this is one of the things that I think a lot of people are unaware of. If you're only looking at that top layer, you might actually see your tickets stay totally steady, or they could even go up, right? And one of the things that is dangerous. So just as an example, I remember a few years ago, we used to do this. I don't know, maybe we still do this as a little bit inside of our tool, but I put a really big emphasis with our team whenever we would go out and do trainings to not measure like how valuable they thought the training was, but
Yeah.
instead how confident
Right.
they felt afterwards. And one of
Right.
the things that we did is we'd ask at the beginning before someone went through and was trained how confident they felt. And at the end, we would also ask them how confident they felt. And one of the things we learned was there was always a significant portion of users, a large portion, actually the majority of users would usually say, hey, I felt like I'm more confident than I was whenever I started. That's great. There are some people whose confidence level didn't really change, right? Which is also expected. You would have some people who would go in and be like, well, I already know what I know. And, this was just good review. I was already confident or whatever. So a lot of people start confident and stay confident. There's some people who were not confident who become confident, but there's actually a significant number of people, close to a third of the people that we would survey. And we did this like hundreds of thousands of users over the years. And there was always a good chunk of users, about a third or so, whose confidence actually went down after training. And what that tells me, and this is a really common thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, is that when you go through any sort of change process, a lot of times you overestimate your ability and your understanding at the start. And so you might come in and be to feel like you know how this software is going to work. You're going to be able to do everything you need to do. And then all of a sudden somebody shows you and teaches you and your confidence goes down. Well, is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. It could be. It could mean that your trainer and your training is really, really bad and it's confusing. It's introducing confusion. But if your application is complex and a user comes in with an oversimplified understanding of what's possible in your application, and now you open up this whole world of possibilities to them. Now it's not that you're introducing confusion, you're introducing the idea that there's power and there's capability that exists in the application that the user didn't understand before. And now you might have just kickstarted some level of curiosity. So is confidence going down viewed as a good thing or a bad thing? Well, it all depends on you really doing an evaluation on the effectiveness of what you're doing, and is it driving to the outcomes that you want? So let me give you just a couple of other things that I think are really helpful to think about when it comes to this whole idea of support and the types of quality support questions that we're getting. There's actually been a lot of studies that show that there is a really strong indicator between churn and support tickets in the first 90 days of an account. So one of the things that I think is really a good question to ask yourself is, when are you getting the support tickets too? Because you might just say, well, we train the account and the support tickets go down. Well, that is actually a really good indicator in the beginning, especially during the implementation phase, when the customer's trying to get everything figured out, when they're trying to distribute the licenses, when they're trying to make sure that the users are really using it. There's been a lot of studies that show that a high volume of support tickets in that first 90 days is a really good corollary to churn. And that would indicate, again, loudly failing. Somebody's loudly failing. And that's actually a great time where training is going to have the largest impact on support. Because if you can enable a customer to find the answers to their questions, or teach them to go through and find training, then a lot of the outreach and the frustration is going to be minimized. So I think that's another thing to look at. So there's the type of ticket that you're receiving, and there's also when in the life of the customer that ticket is being received too. Because if you're building out a really effective training program in the beginning, then you're going to see a lower level of support questions that are coming out too, because the customer's getting further along. They're starting to see success earlier and faster. And so that's just another little piece to think about. So it's like, when am I receiving the tickets? What type of tickets am I receiving? And is that correlated more or less to the user getting further along in the journey that I want them to go down?
That's awesome, Todd. I think another thing is, again, gosh, I don't want to call it a myth. I think it's just something that we do wrong in the SaaS industry, is and especially in B2B. Like B2C, it's a different story. B2B, I think our goal to tell people our software is so easy to use, you don't need training, is so wrong. And I also believe that telling people, yeah, buy some professional services here at the start, we'll do train the trainer, and then you're off and running. Again, not setting up an adoption plan and saying, hey, we are really good at responding to the needs of your users. So as we bought this for this business outcome, you're going to see that business outcome. But along the way, we're going to adapt, and we're going to build even better business outcomes for you. So how are we going to continue to get that message out to your users? How are we going to continue to let them know that they have these benefits waiting them, right? And so I feel like if you're not being honest in that, going back to your timing, so everybody's releasing out their AI modules, right? Well, guess what everyone's struggling with? Well, besides IT just allowing people to have AI, but once they have it, they don't know what to do with it. And then they have a horrible experience, like, this wasn't worth my time. And then everybody's scrambling, like, well, you guys need to train your people on it. Well, I thought you said your software was easy to use, and now you're in it. Yeah, there you are, right? Like, by not consistently bundling in training with your software and saying, hey, the goal is to make people aware so they do ask questions. We want questions. That's why it goes back to our myth, is training should spark questions. Todd, I'll give you a perfect example of this. There was I like to stay active. There's this race here. It's called the Bear Gutsman. By the title of that race, I should have known it's not something I wanted to do.
That sounds, I don't know what it is, but it sounds miserable.
Yeah. But it didn't sound that bad. Like, it was like, oh, it's only,
it doesn't sound bad. Bear Gutsman. I feel like exposed and vomiting. That's what those are the two images that conjures in my mind. That doesn't sound positive or good or easy.
So it was only like 13 miles, and I'm thinking 13 miles, at the time I was training for some big things, and it wasn't even close to the amount of miles I was running. And I'm like, okay, this isn't bad. I should be able to handle this. I didn't really go read the website about what it was. I just thought it was their 50th anniversary. So I'm like, that's cool. I'll get a cool t-shirt. And Todd, what it was is you basically run up this mountain, and the elevation gains were insane. And there's one point where you can't even run. You just crawl up it. And I didn't know that. And so I quickly found out in the first 6 miles, when people were pulling over and vomiting, that, whoa, I had gotten myself into something. I didn't ask the right questions, right? And so I think, again, if you take anything out of this episode that you should be relaying back to leadership, is there are good questions and there are bad questions. And our goal is to reduce down bad questions, but we should also have a goal in increasing good questions. And this is what good questions look like. And those good questions should target advanced feature sets, features that make you as a SaaS company money, that separate you from your competitors. Those are the things you want to focus on. But you got to answer the basic ones, right? And that's why that's so important. We reduce those down as soon as possible. But we get into these higher level questions and get them asking, how do I do this? How do I do that? Because they know the why. They know those bigger outcomes of what they want to get to. So please, people, take that away. Set your executives up with the right information so they understand the need for expanding your training services. And again, you can't accomplish that in human-led and structure-led training. You can't accomplish it, people. You have to have a digital program that supports it for both your SMB and your enterprise. You have to do it. Again, if you're not incorporating that as part of the process, if they're two separate things, we have academy and a professional services. When people tell me they have two separate things, professional services, academy, I know you're failing. I'm going to tell you that you're failing. You're not getting to the advanced features you want to get to because you teach them separately. And so they only use one of them, right? And so that's my other hot take on this myth, is you can't separate your professional services with your digital academy. You got to combine them both so you can make sure that training's not an event. It's a process. Change is a process, because your software is always evolving. People are different. Everybody has a different way in which they learn, the speed at which they learn, their familiarity with technology, their curiosity. It's a process, and you got to set your team up for success by teaching them that. But you also have to teach your customers that. Like, this is going to be a process, and it's okay. We got you. We're going to help you get to these points.
Yeah, I love that. I think one of the things that I worry a lot about when we talk about support too is one, the support site where users are submitting tickets and they're going to find and read documentation. Like, it's necessary to have those resources, but I sometimes worry too that, like, the support team and the academy team or the learning team or the professional services team, that they're not all working in harmony either, right? And so one of the things that is problematic is, if training is going to potentially introduce tickets, are we also prepared to understand how to enable support with those resources? Beautiful. And then do we help support then point the customer back to something other than just like, here's your documentation site? How do we then take that customer all the way through? So, like, considering that whole user journey, I think, is really important. I just had one other thought on this front too, right? So when it comes down to thinking through the types of tickets that we're getting, it might be helpful just for the audience here to think through. It's like, okay, so basically, Todd, you're saying, and Casey, you're saying, it may not be that that all my support tickets are going to go down. If you're just looking at a single line, then that can be misleading, and it can also lead to misunderstanding what's actually going on. So you got to take that second click in. But like, what are the types of things that we should be looking at? So I mentioned one before, but I just want to kind of just summarize these because I think it might be helpful. The first is the friction points that you're running into. So that's like, the basic how-to stuff. That's the stuff we're hoping is going to go down, right? Where do I click? I don't understand what's on this screen. What is this label mean, right? Like the really basic stuff that training really should have a big impact on lowering down. And that's the kind of stuff that we want to see. Then there's the second type that I think we want to see up, and that is like the use case and the workflow type tickets. So that's like, how do I want to accomplish this goal, right? I have this thing. Like, how do I do that in your application?
How do I automate?
I have this specific thing that I want to accomplish. I want to figure out how to make that happen.
A better way to work. I want
a better way to work. Exactly. I want to learn how to do this better. Now, the cool part is those types of tickets, those are the types of that like ideally if you're doing especially early training for a customer, those tickets you would expect should go up, right? Because those are the more advanced types questions. But then that goes back to this point of, is that information making it back to the team who's responsible for driving education for the customer? And then, because I actually think one of the big failures is a lot of times the training only occurs at the beginning, because we know that high support volume in the beginning and the customer not feeling supported in the beginning is a high predictor of churn. So we put all of our energy at the start. But if you got those questions and now you have go back to a customer like 6 months into the relationship, or 4 or 5 months into the relationship, and those types of questions, we know that those are the more advanced things that are going to be coming up. How do we serve that up in the middle of the engagement of the customer so that they can get even further? So that's a third one. And then you mentioned this earlier, and I love this one, which is, what are the tickets that actually lead to expansion opportunities? What are the ones where the customer could potentially get more value out of your software if they were able to purchase this other tool or advance to another tier? Those types of questions we also hopefully we're going to see going up too, because that means that the customer is able to get more and more value out of you, and they're going to be staying around longer. So I think if you think about those three things, I think it'll be really, really helpful.
Okay.
Just maybe to summarize some of the things we've been talking about.
Okay. I'm going to try it this way. Support tickets number one that we don't want or to reduce as fast as possible is, I did it this way in the previous software. How do I do it?
Yeah. How do I do everything the same way I used to do it?
Yeah. Okay. That's level one that we want to get down as fast as possible. And we want users understanding how to do that as soon as possible. Next level of questions is, I want to work in a better way. How do I work in a better way? Right. That's number two. Like, okay, I'm doing the same thing I've always done, and I'm just doing it in your software now. How do I do this better? How do I increase my productivity with what I know how to do? The third one is you introducing to the user, whoa, I never thought about working that way. I didn't even know that was possible. So I would say those are the three levels in what we're trying to accomplish. Because a new way to work is probably an expansion opportunity where I'm like, wait, you're saying I could do this, this, and this?
I love that.
That's amazing. Like,
yeah,
I
so
want
good.
that. Right?
No, for sure. Well, and what's neat about that, like all of a sudden, hopefully if you're somebody who like is in customer success or customer education and you're talking with these customers, you recognize that those types of questions indicate a very different relationship that you have with your customer. Mm-hmm. And so what's neat about that is, I would say training is so well prepared to transition the mindset of the customer from, how do I keep, I'm frustrated, I'm annoyed, this doesn't work the way I want to, man, I can see that this could be transformative for me.
Yes.
Help me unlock that. Help me unlock that transformation, because I could be totally different. Now, the mindset of the customer is completely different based off of the types of questions that you're receiving. And oh my goodness, man, if we could get more intelligent about recognizing that and identifying the percent of those questions, where they're happening, who's being fielded to answer them, and then what we're delivering as the answer to the customer, whoa, that would be so different, right? And what we could actually help the customer accomplish. And I unfortunately feel like a lot of SaaS companies haven't done the work to really understand what are the types of questions, when are they being received, where are they being sent to, who's being tasked to answer them, how are they answering them, and what is the next step or the next direction for that customer to get them to the destination we want them to ultimately get to. how different would it be if we could be much better at identifying those customers and knowing the right journey to take them on as a result?
Okay, TK, I got to double click. And then we got to wrap up. Double click. Okay, here we go. You do a great job of onboarding. You get the user understanding how, hey, this is how I previously did it. I now do it this way, right? And they're just like, oh, that's fantastic. And implementation's handling that. It's going great. It's fantastic. As a user, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I swear there should be a way that I could automate this. And so they put in a support ticket. Support person, what's their goal? What are they told? Reduce down the amount of time you spend with a customer.
You got to deflect it. You got to close it as quickly as possible.
Quickly as possible. So they send a documentation link of saying, oh, that's interesting. Here's a documentation link. Okay.
Closed. Ticket closed.
Ticket closed. Here's your documentation.
I did it. I closed the ticket.
And we know that users do not want documentation. They want documentation if it's a quick support ticket. I know what I'm trying to accomplish, right? Like, how do I do it in this software? A support ticket's easy. Okay, yeah, you click here. Here's the button. Oh, gosh, that's where that button is. Cool. Okay, that was weird where they put it. But when I want to know how to do something better and it goes to support, the likelihood, I'm not saying it's never, but because of the metrics of the support team, it is more likely that they're going to get some very basic answer, some documentation, and normally that user is going to say, well, maybe they just can't do it, and done. And they're going to go find another way to do it. Or
they're going to go try it on their own and fail to figure it out, get frustrated, and then come to that same conclusion.
Yes. So if we've trained our support team, these are tickets we're reducing. This falls in this category. But if you get tickets like this, route that back to the CSM. So the CSM or the AE, if they're in digital scale, they don't have enough ARR to require a CSM, or whoever they needs to go to. So they can say, hey, I saw a support ticket. That's fantastic. Hey, let me introduce you to this course that I think you're going to love, right? Now you have a different way to approach this. So going back to your point, Todd, of knowing what type of tickets and what person at your company should answer those tickets or questions. That's a better way to say it. That's huge, because you're probably missing a ton of opportunities because people's metrics are different. And now I'm going to reverse it. I have a CSM and my point of contact says, hey, we have a bunch of new users that just, they need to get started. So could you give us a basic 101 training, give them an overview? That shouldn't go to the CSM. The CSM should be level 2, level 3. How do I help you automate? And how do I get you to think differently on a different way to work? So you can see how this is working. You can see if it goes to the wrong person, why that's a waste, and you're missing opportunities. So Todd, clicking down on what you just said, that was magic. That was gold, people.
I love it. All right, folks. Hopefully this has been enlightening for you as you've listened to this. I don't know. I want to know if other people are realizing this point, that it's like, it's not just about reducing support tickets, right? Like, that is an easy metric to track. But the things we're talking about, it is one click in, but it shouldn't be that much more difficult to understand. And you should be able to analyze this in a similar way and be way more effective at understanding this. So hopefully this is something that is, eye-opening for you. And you're asking yourself that tier 2 question, right? Of, man, like, that sounds valuable. I want to figure out how to do that. And I want to go a little bit further and figure that out in your life. Casey, this is SaaS Therapy, man. What would your homework be to our audience today on this topic?
Yeah, I would be, if you're in customer success, what are the questions you're getting asked to do most? Are they how-to questions on that basic first level? And if they are, okay, now if they have identified that, find a way to make sure you're not answering those tickets, right? If you're in customer education, what is the content you're creating? Are you creating it for all 3 levels? And are you hitting the right people with the right information?
At the right time, too.
At the right time, right? So support team, here's what you have to help get these basic how-to questions so we can get you into advanced features. CSMs, here's what we've designed to help your users get to this and to this. And so as you report back to the executive team, you're reporting back in those 3 stages. Hey, we're reducing down here and we're increasing here and here. Like, you should actually have a goal to increase questions from your users. And Todd, I'm going to give one tip besides homework. So homework is find out what questions you're getting asked. Todd has a wonderful tip that he puts into his training. Now, he doesn't do it outside of training. He puts it in the training, his little survey questions. And he just did this with a very complex software, as he asked the questions to the end users inside of the training. So it's not separate. It's inside the training. What would you do to reduce down the complexity? do you feel like you're going to need more ongoing training? Now, it's not to sell professional services. What Todd's getting at is, how do I make sure that the organization understands that the user wants these level 2, level 3 outcomes, and they feel like they need it and they want it? Like, Todd, I think that was genius in how you did that. So homework, find out what questions you're having. 2, find out how to expose and get those level 2, level 3 questions that we were talking about.
Okay. I love that. I want to add my own piece of homework to this. So first thing is, I would guess that the first thing that you thought you should do if you listen to this conversation is to analyze the support tickets you are receiving and understanding what types of questions are coming through. And some of you might have done that already, right? So if you're like listening to this and you're like, preach, Casey and Todd, like, I agree with you. We went and we did this same analysis. We understand the types of questions we're getting. Great. That's awesome. I want to add another one, and that is that, Casey, when you mentioned this idea of how would you make this training more effective, or like if you were the admin, how would you do this differently, which is a lot of the questions that I've been working in lately. I would just basically say, can you figure out a way to solicit more questions from more questions from your users? Because again, there are a lot of users out there who are silently failing and silently succeeding. And the ones who are silently succeeding, they probably have insight that you could share with your other customers. And the ones who are silently failing, if you could help them speak up better, you're going to have a much better idea of how you can support your customers better. So like, just as another example, I created a training recently where one of the questions I asked was like, hey, now that you've watched this training, if you could give one tip back to one of your colleagues.
Oh, that was a good one.
What would that tip be, right? So figuring out how can you solicit more feedback from your users, get them to ask you more questions or to share more insights about what feels like is working and what feels like the deficits are, the more prepared you're going to be to help lead that customer from where they are currently to the destination you ultimately want them to get to. And unfortunately, we don't generally do a great job of understanding where the customer is at the moment. And so do a better job of identifying where your customers are so that you can move them to where they want to be.
Beautiful. TK, great episode. Great myth buster.
Okay, thanks everybody. We're going to keep doing these myths. We want to hear from you too, though. So if there are more myths that you'd like us to cover, or if you disagree with me and Casey, we want to hear you. Maybe you think we're all full of it and it's crazy. Let us know in the comments. Follow us. We release these episodes every week on Wednesday, and we hope that you come back and keep joining us on this journey. So thanks again, Casey, as always, and thanks everybody else. Have a great rest of your month. SaaS Therapy is brought to you by Brainstorm, the SaaS platform for SaaS adoption. Learn more at brainstorminc.com.